Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Daphne Wells. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. So we had a little pre-conversation, so we're like old buddies now.
We are. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So I am Daphne. I live in the beautiful South Island of New Zealand and work with women around the globe. I'm an intuitive success coach, mental fitness coach, and numerologist. So I tie all of that together beautifully to help women, especially women, feel safe and secure to live life their way.
I think that's something that we all struggle with, living life our way. I think that's beautiful. I want to live my life my way. Right?
And one of the first barriers to that is, what is our way and who are we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I know that was part of my journey. I have a friend that is starting a new job, and she had to fill out a questionnaire about like, what are your coping techniques in a crisis? And she goes, I don't know, like my husband just calms me down, but I don't know, like if he's not around, then I text you, and if you're not around, I don't know, I just spin out until somebody responds to me and calms me down. How I can't write that down. And I was like, well, you have to, take the time and figure out, you have to pay attention to what do you do in those situations and learn who you are outside of the codependency of, I got to ask my husband, I got to ask Alicia, I have to ask somebody else how to make me feel better,
We look for that outside of us. And of course, the other go-to that we as moms do, and that I did for a long time, was in a crisis, take care of the kids. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As long as they're okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And yes, as moms, we do that. And yet, when we're negating ourselves in the process, that's not helpful in the long run.
Right. Yeah. So how did you get to, you said tell me again what you do, because you said some interesting words that all just went out of my head right now, but.
So we're particularly talking to moms here. So I work with women who are soul-led visionary leaders, and they are they all know that they've got magic to share with the world. And they want to feel, and yet there's this fear of, is anyone going to listen to me? Is anyone going to take notice of me?
Yeah.
And oftentimes for us, what our gifts are and how we help others in the world becomes like a hobby on the side of our real work, whether that's a job in momming or momming. Because there's this belief that, and I haven't identified where this comes from, and where it comes from is irrelevant. It's that we believe that no one will pay us for doing our work in the world. Mm-hmm. Because for most of the women I work with, it's not like they're making physical doodads. It's like they're helping people through a process. They're a coach like you. They're a healer. they've got gifts to share, magic to share, whether that's a message to share, their story, their life story that can help other people. And yet the crux of the issue is that when we can transform that into a business, we are able to help so many more people.
Mm-hmm.
And we're then able to do what all of us as mums want to do, spend more time with our children and
Mm-hmm.
create the lifestyle that we want for them.
Yeah.
So how I came to this work is I ended up in a toxic marriage with 4 children. And I'm going back a couple of decades now to where I was in the marriage. And of course, extricating yourself from that situation is not easy when you have 4 children in tow. So that was like a climbing out of a deep, dark hole.
Mm-hmm.
It was, a toxic, abusive marriage. And so there was a whole lot of growth in me to pull myself out of that. In that process, I went through a lot of different counsellors. And what I found was I ended up back in the hole with them trying to figure out why I'd got there. And I was like, really? I want to know how to move on with my life. Yes, I need to heal that. And I also need to make progress. So through that process, I ended up on my own with 4 children, working a job in school hours, with a business that I created and grew on the side of that to add to income, and burned out, like adrenal burnout, was no use to anyone. Walked away from that business and then ended up buying a business, a hospitality business, on the pretext that staff could work it. Big joke. I ended up working 7 days for years. In that process, I hired and fired 3 different business coaches because they shitted on me. They told me what I should be doing in my business. And I already knew what I should be doing, but I didn't know what was stopping me doing it and how to overcome that. And in amongst that, I met up with a life coach, and that woman literally changed my life. And so I thought, if I can learn to do what she does and add my business skills into the mix, I can really help women like me who've been through a relationship status change and are wondering, well, what's next?
Yeah, I
so
think
since then,
that being shitted on all the time, I think that's a huge thing that a lot of us experience every day in our lives. And it translates into just making us unhappy, because you should be home with your kids, but maybe I can't, or maybe I don't even want to. So now I feel bad, but I feel bad because I can't or because I don't want to. But it's something that I should be doing. Yeah.
But we should be doing all these other things too. We should be helping out at school. We should be at every sports game. We should be, and where are we in this process? We end up wondering who we even are.
Well, nobody sits us down when we're growing up and says, okay, so you need to pay attention to what is it that makes you happy, and what is it that fulfills you, and when you're upset, how do you calm yourself down? I was talking just yesterday about when I was 16 that I had lost all of my coping mechanisms. And I was seriously depressed at that point. But I didn't know that talking to my mom every day was a coping mechanism of mine on, feeling heard and getting all of my emotions and my feelings out. I didn't know that was a way that I maintained my happiness, honestly, because I didn't have any friends and I didn't have my mom around. And so I just started declining, and to the point where I was like, I don't even want to be here anymore. And I think I was in my 30s looking back at that and like, oh, the times that I felt the most depressed in my life was when I didn't have people to talk to, when I didn't have people to like collaborate with on emotionally and whatnot. Like there are certain things that I do that keep me feeling not like a caged lion, you know? And when I stop doing those things, I start feeling anxious and unhappy and so on.
And knowing what those things are for you is, and often we're even shooted on in that, you know, this should make you happy. You have to behave this way. Sounds like you were blessed with a mother who helped you find your way in life. And then when you didn't have that, yeah, I
eventually
feel like
I got to a point where I wasn't, you know, I would say I was codependent with her if I, you know, started feeling suicidal when I couldn't talk to her every day. Like there was a little codependency there. I got to a point where, you know, I don't have this need to talk to her specifically every day. Like she was my blankie for many, many years, which was ultimately a burden on her too. And, you know, I found different ways of feeling at peace. I've, you know, talked to therapists and having coaches and having a significant other I can talk to. And so it doesn't have, like I've spread it out now, so I'm more balanced and it's not dependent solely on one person. And I also don't need necessarily to talk to the people. I self-coach, you know, I self-soothe now too. So it's not all external. It's become more internal too.
And as we become more spiritually aware, that does happen, that we are not so codependent on other people. However, what you identified was that you need to talk to other people or process verbally in some way, shape or form, whether it's internally with your spirit or whether it's externally with another person. And the wisdom of not having just one person, because then that does lead us to that codependency, which isn't helpful for either person in a relationship.
So I think you said that one of your specialties is moms who have been through a relationship status change. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what I found on my journey was, you know, as I shared before, I got out of the marriage. I had a job that was covering our living expenses. The children were as relatively settled as they can be at that point. And then I was like, okay, so is this all there is to life? You know, is this my life sentence? Where am I in this? And who even am I? You know, the children were in teenager and mid-children age group by this stage. And I was like, you know, there's a timeline where our children leave home, as you did at 16, obviously, and don't need us anymore on a day-to-day basis. And then who are we? And who are we when we're not somebody's wife or partner?
Yeah.
And I, you know, back then there was I couldn't find support. Like this was kind of, I think we were sending emails, but that was kind of the extent of the internet back then, right? And I realized things have changed. And yet what I know to be true is that we actually flourish when we're in like an intimate circle of peers. So if we go back to generations ago, women used to meet in circles in little towns in their communities, and like you know, if you were getting married, Alicia, we'd get together and we'd make a quilt for you and your husband to be, or we'd prepare food for you. We'd help you put your home together. We'd, you know, it was a communal thing. Women met and did things together. And the power of those small inner circles, I like to call them, they're magical. And so what I have put together is this extraordinary mom's circle for those women who have been through that relationship status change and are like, what's next? Because you can feel really alone at that stage, you know, in that process of a relationship status change, we lose friends.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our family doesn't even support us.
Mm-hmm.
We can feel more alone than ever. And we also, because we're alone with children, don't have the flexibility to go out and find that support. So it's this soul-searching time.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much my story. You know, I separated from my son's dad when he was 14 months old. And, you know, that was... It's hard because at one point I thought that being a single mom was, you know, a sentence worse than death. And, you know, I've come to really enjoy single momhood. Like I have a partner who's very much involved in my son's life. So it's hard to even say I'm a single mom. But it turned into this joy that I never would have seen coming. But when the split was happening, it was the worst thing that could possibly happen in my thought process.
There's this, how am I going to cope on my own? How is this all going to work? Who am I? Where do I fit in the world? Because we still have that dream that we want to create this ideal life for our children. And what does that look like now that we're on our own with them?
My thought was I just didn't want my son. I mean, I didn't want to do it by myself, but I didn't want my son to have, you know, grow up with parents that weren't together like I did. And we were about the same age when our parents split. And so it was like, oh, well, here we are, the cycle's repeating itself. And I didn't want that for him. And I don't want that for him in his future family either. I can't control that, but
you can't control that, no. And yet what you can control is the environment you provide for your son. And from my perspective as a numerologist, what that comes back to is really knowing who we are. And through numerology, we really know. So we have a physical DNA that we see in our body. We also have an energetic DNA that we can calculate through numerology. And that really, like, there's no doubting that. It's how you choose to show up in the energy that is in your DNA. There's a choice around that. And yet that's a huge confidence booster when you know, well, okay, this is who I am.
Yeah. I'm very fascinated with numerology, and like not enough to do research on anything, but like I love, if anybody wants to tell me like what my what my stuff is, I'm like, oh, tell me more. Like I want to know that makes so much sense, you know.
Yeah. And it gives you like radical permission to be who you were born being. Because what happens is we come into this world as this perfect little baby, hardwired energetically to bring our gifts and contributions to the world that I talked about earlier. We all have a role to play in life. And yet over the first 7 years of our life, well, over our whole lifetime, we've been told who to be. Particularly in that first 7 years, we know scientifically that children are sponges. So they absorb anything they're told. And we are conditioned to be somebody other than who we were born being. And so as adults, there's this natural coming back to, and it happens eventually to everyone, really. It happens at different times, and particularly for moms who, are single moms. It's that time when, well, who am I now?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be a big piece of the work we do together in the group. And also, how can you then parent your child in the way that they need, because they've got their own energetic DNA as well. And we can really fine-tune our parenting for what the children need.
Yeah. So fascinating that, yeah, I could talk about this forever, but is there a piece of advice that you want to give to our mom listeners?
So one really big advice is to, at some point, focus on you. Like, when you're okay, everyone else around you is. And that was the huge lesson from that adrenal burnout, when I shared earlier briefly that I ended up burning out, walking away from that successful business, because I was giving all the time to clients. I was giving all the time to children, and I was empty. I was giving from the fumes rather than from the overflow, because I didn't know that caring for me was important. No one had ever told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that taking care of yourself, it's like the putting the oxygen mask on the airplane before you look after anyone else.
Yeah.
And it seems as moms, we need to hear that a lot.
Yeah. I do remember the first time I heard that, honestly, to give from the overflow.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I'm pretty sure it was Rachel Hollis that I heard it from. And she said that, if your vase is half full, half empty, however you look at it, and you start giving out from the vase, eventually it's going to run out. And then all that's left that you're giving, because we don't stop giving at that point, but we're giving from our emptiness. And that's when there's, the shouting and the all the things that we do that are not how we envisioned being a parent. Have you heard that? Where like, I was the perfect parent before I had kids.
Oh, aren't we all? It's
right?
So easy when we can look at others and see,
Yeah. But when you fill the vase and you keep filling the vase, eventually it overflows and you can give from the overflow. So your vase can constantly be at 100%. And that doesn't mean that you give people the 10%, and get down to 90. It means that you keep giving to yourself until there's overflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It means that we just keep giving and giving and giving, because we are constantly refueling and feeding and caring for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Is there a book that you would recommend?
So one book that really changed my life, focusing on women, was Women Who Run with Wolves, Clarissa Pinkola Estes.
Woman Who Ran with Wolves? Interesting.
And she's a brilliant therapist, psychoanalyst. She's really learned and done a whole heap of research. And it goes back to the old stories and the old ways that women were, and draws that into parallels of where that shows up in life today. And it's a beautiful book to read. It's got lots of stories in it, and then she draws the wisdom out of those. I feel it's a book for women and for men to help understand the balance between the masculine and the feminine energy that we all hold. Yeah.
The reason I ask for book recommendations is because I want to know what other people are reading. And when when a book grabs me, like the explanation of the book, I'm like, ooh, and then I go buy it. Only on Audible or only on Kindle. I'm not allowed to buy like physical books anymore because there's just no more space. And then I'm more likely to read them digitally or listen to them audibly because I'm an Audible learner or I'm on the go. So, and even if I'm not on the go and I'm reading before I go to bed, I still have my phone. So like, I'll just sit there in bed and read it.
and another one of hers that is only on Audible is The Dangerous Woman.
The Dangerous Woman. Interesting.
The Dangerous Old Woman. It's something like that. And it's so her definition of the danger zone is completely different to how we understand it. It's the ancient definition. So a woman or a king or somebody with some form of responsibility for others would protect people in his danger zone. So the dangerous old woman is not dangerous to other people. She actually protects them.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it's again, I love the storytelling on that is amazing. She is so gifted with her tonality of voices of the different characters in the stories she tells. I love her work.
I love that.
It extends who we are as women.
Very cool. So tell, where can we find you?
So I'm on social media as me. You can also find me. My website is daphnewells.com. If you want to get in touch with me, message me on social media or email me at daphne@daphnewells.com.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for joining us today and pouring into our listeners and into me and just sharing the space with me. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. So we will have another episode of Imperfect Momming next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. See you next time.